page looks like. I appreciate you showing up. And if you're not showing up every week, we miss you. We've got, obviously, today's reporting AMA with Kit. We're going to take care of that. And then next week, we've got creating post-sale processes. That one's going to be a very interesting one. We're going to do a lot of demoing. I've kind of got a sneak peek on that one, so you're going to want to check that out. The following week, we're going to look at what's new in workflows. So workflow is a really big event. So we've always got a lot of questions. So make sure you come to that and get your questions answered live. We've got one more event that's going to be in between these two, but at the end of the year, December 19th, that's going to be the end of the HubSpot Admins Hug year. We're going to do a big networking event. So come, share your LinkedIn, connect with other admins, and then we'll talk about what the next 2024 looks like for everybody. If you've got any questions on past events, if you want to take a peek at those are always linked here at the bottom. You can load more, check those out. Those are also always available on our YouTube channel. So if you want to take a peek at those, you can go to the YouTube channel, check those out. The Super Admin Bootcamp, that just wrapped up. I saw a bunch of people graduated from that. So congratulations, everybody. If you want to take a peek at that and get on there, it looks like they're going to start again on February 1st. So make sure you get your registrations in for that. If you haven't joined the HubSpot Admin Hug community on the HubSpot site, go ahead and do that. We post all of these events in there. Sometimes we get people jumping in and answering questions that maybe we missed at the event. If you haven't joined the LinkedIn group, please make sure you're joining us. We got a lot of discussion going on in there, a lot of people asking questions, talking to each other. Bevy, I know I talk about Bevy a lot, poor Bevy, but it sometimes just doesn't do what we want it to do. So if you've got any questions, take a peek at that. I already hit record. We're going to do things a little bit differently, and we are going to have an AMA with Kit today. So Kit, thank you so much for joining us today. You are highly requested on every single solitary survey that we put out. There's always more reporting. So for everyone here, Kit, thank you. Let's get started. So I know there was a lot of questions already submitted, so Kit's already got a lot of that prepared. But if you've got any questions, please go ahead and use the channel. And if you've got questions that you want to put and have Kit answer, put those in Q&A, upvote. We've got that back again. So make use of it, and we'll keep it as organized as possible. And I will try not to sit here in awe, and I will try to remember to ask those questions as well for everyone. All right, Kit.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Happy to be back. I did join a hug back in May of this year, so it's online if you want to go back and watch that. I'll try not to make that a repeat of the info that was shared in that one. It did kind of turn into a bit of an AMA, which was totally fine, but we wanted to have more time and space for any sort of questions that come my way. There's a bit of background. I have actually hit my 9-year mark at HubSpot on beginning of November. So I've been around for quite a while. 6.5 of those years were spent on the services end. 4 of those were as a consultant. So I'm kind of stepping back into that role where any questions that you want to throw at me, I love it. I welcome it. I have been on the product side for 2.5 years, and I sit on the custom report builder and as well as the single object builder. But I know that reporting in general is a lot of different things. It's analytics tools. It's these other builders of journey analytics. Even though I don't own those, I could give you my advice. Maybe I'm not going to be exactly perfect as the product owner of those spaces, but I'm not intimidated to talk about those spaces. I know, Chad, you had asked about that. Potentially, depending on where the conversation goes, we could turn into those sections, but just wanted to kind of give a preface that I don't own those spaces, but I could potentially provide some insight into it because I do care about reporting journey as a whole. I also am curious to kind of open up the floor in some ways of learning from you all about what are the hardest parts about reporting. We have our insights, our hypotheses, and guesses as to that. 2024 is really shaping out to be a lot more about connection and making it easier and quicker to build reports and not have you spend so much time on the building process. So I am very anything that you want to throw in the chat, my team and I will pour through it. So did want to have that caveat. We could start off. I don't know if there's any Q&A already in the chat, but there were some that were submitted to the form, and I can kind of just kick things off and start. One was kind of around, I actually probably will start with same object associations or just associations in general. There were 2 questions that were around that. Let me go ahead and share my screen. 1 second.
Perfect. Yeah, and don't forget to get those questions in the Q&A, everybody. Oop, now that I see them starting popping in.
Cool. Okay, so association labels is something that, let me actually go to settings. So this is kind of a 2-year project by the CRM team. And if you check out in data management, you'll notice that on all of the objects, there's this option for association labels. And this allows you to define relationships when records are associated with other records. And for a while, you could only associate different objects. So let's see here, like I've got an association of contacts to companies. Let me actually go to this one because this is my same object one. But then recently, there has been an update that you can actually create same object association labels. The common one is going to be companies with child companies and parent companies. And that has been a bit complicated coming into the reporting space because there isn't an option to like double select a data source twice. So, and it's also, when we're building reports using a left join, which I talked about in the last session in May. So essentially, like, it's really important what that left table is. And that has been something that my team has worked on this year of making this enabled in the report builder. And so I'm going to showcase that today. I did want to just kind of give you the lay of the land of this demo portal. I just added this just to have.
Can you zoom in just a little bit?
Yeah.
That should be a little bit better.
That better?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so just a simple example. These are, I'm going to be talking about relationships between companies and deals. So we've got Marriott International, that's that parent company. And there's these child companies, these child hotels that are associated to that parent. And there's a lot of instances and use cases that you would want to kind of look at different reports that may look at the parent or may look at the child. You have to remember that the parent has deals associated to them, as well as the children have deals associated to them. So it matters with that relationship and that association to understand what you're looking to build. So just as some examples, I'm going to talk through, I'll just probably start with use case 1. So let's say you wanted to build a report that shows all of the child companies that generate over 5 million and have a parent marked as Marriott International. So I'm essentially like targeting that same object association label. And the way that you would do that report is you would come over to reports, you would create a new report. You would, for this one, we're going to be working on the custom report builder. And I'm wanting to look at the companies. If you look back at this report, I'm wanting to understand all, like I just basically want a list of all the child companies. So my report is focused on companies. That's going to be my primary data source, that main table. In this use case, yep, I actually, let me just add deals to this. Well, I'll stick to that. I'll stick to the use case. So I'm actually not going to select any secondary source. I'm just going to be looking at companies. But before I go into the actual editor, I'm going to set up my associations. Now, associations is limiting and shrinking my data because I'm then saying, I actually want to focus on the children and I want to like just look at those children of that parent. So I'm going to select that as my main association label. And then when I come in here, you'll see two things. You'll actually see that the child company is the primary, but it is also bringing in the parent company. So I can see what that is. Now, I'm wanting to do two things. One, I want to look at annual revenue of the child company that's over 5 million. So I'll add that to filters. And when I use association labels, there is this option under here called association label. And remember, I'm wanting to target the parent of these children. So I'm going to add both of those to filters. I'm going to say is greater than or equal to 5 million. And I'm going to say is any of, actually, that's not what I want. I specifically wanted to look at Marriott International. Now, this is one of those things where what makes reporting difficult, especially in HubSpot, is that there's almost a lot of this historical knowledge or in-depth knowledge that I may know as the owner of this space, but it's not clear to the users of like what you should be using. And this is one of those cases. Record ID is the actual record that I'm wanting to highlight. And so if you see, I'll add this to my filters. I'm actually choosing the like what company record that I want to go off of, where I want to say, hey, Marriott International is the record ID. If I did something like company name, that can still work. And I am actually going under the parent table. Do you see here? I'm looking under the parent. And so I could go off of this, but the problem is that I have to type it out. I have to know that that's the right spelling. And I just find that using record ID is so much easier because I get that drop-down list and I can see the label of it. So that's just one tip that I recommend using is record ID. So now I have what I'm looking for. I want all children of Marriott International, and I want that over $5 million of annual revenue. And I'm probably just gonna go back and add in the record ID of, I'll make this a table, the record ID of all those children, and then that will bring in the name of, these are the only two that actually had over 5 million. There were 3, but one didn't have 5 million. So that targets exactly what I was looking to do. I had to use association labels, I had to use filters, and then I'm just pulling in those records.
Perfect. I think everyone's excited about that record ID tip. That's,
I know. Yeah. I wish that like in I talk with my team a lot about enablement, onboarding, things that we want to help guide. And it's really difficult because I don't know if anyone is a cook here and they go to a recipe website and they see all of these pop-up ads and all of these experiences that it just slows the whole experience down. I don't want the report builder to be that. I don't want there to be like all these help tips and these banners and all these things, but it's like, how do I almost create like a consultant for this builder? Those are all things that we're thinking about. And I see this building experience and maybe not even requiring you to go into the editor, but maybe a lighter form customization, being smarter, being more intuitive. That's the whole premise of AI and using those abilities of recommendations and also helping you throughout the process. So
in the meantime, we have you here to tell us all these awesome things.
Cool. Yes, exactly. So share it with a friend, pass that along. Record ID is huge, especially when we're talking about associations. Now, do we want to stay on same object associations? How are people feeling about what was demonstrated so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got some positive thoughts on here. We do have quite a bit of questions coming in, singular questions. So if you guys want to go in there and upvote them, then we'll be able to rank them. Let's see. Nothing really on these. Let's See, company names where I've been looking too. So we've got just some confirmation on those. If you want to keep going through your use cases, I think that's
Yeah, I'll go through one more because this actually talks about the typical cross-object association label. So let's say I want to build a report that now shows the number of deals of each of Marriott International's child companies. So I'm actually not going to change the way I set this up with my association labels, but I am going to select deals, and I'll go back to choose association labels, and I'm still going to keep it as child. But what this is to show, is I can still use my cross-object association labels. So this is once again making my starting data set smaller, right? Instead of doing all companies, I'm now only choosing children. Instead of doing all children and all of their deals, I'm only selecting the relationships between a company and a deal that are marked as non-franchise and franchise. So that's a way that you can use both types of association labels. Something that is coming and we're working on right now is paired association labels cross object. So it work actually just like this, but you can have like a deal to a company could have like equal relationships with that. Let me try to think of an example. Cross object paired labels. It's essentially saying the same thing. Like I could have a paired label between two contacts, and they could be employee and both share the employee, or I could have essentially paired relationships could be the same across, or it could be talking about the two sides of the relationship. So with what you have right now, it's basically one way. I can say that companies to deals is non-franchise, but I don't have like another relationship pair back. That's going to make the cross-object relationship pairing more complete.
Yeah.
So when I go and save this, I'm going to discard my changes. That then adds, it still keeps my child as primary, still have deals, or I've added deals on there. And just to remind myself, I'm bringing in the number of deals for each child company, and I want to break the report down by franchise or non-franchise deal. So that to me is saying I want a pivot table. And I want to have my companies that are the children. I'm actually going to remove this because I don't have that requirement, but I'm going to keep Marriott. And I am going to use the association label on the deals, and I'm going to have that be my column. On my values, which is the metric, with a report, you're constantly wanting to think metrics, which are values, which are numbers, or dimensions, which are usually like strings or drop down select, Boolean. But I have default measures up here. So I actually want the count of the deals, not the count of the companies. And I'll then just drag that into my values. And just through there, I have everything I need. I have all of my deals by each individual children that are attached to Marriott. And I've broken it down by that association label of the relationship between companies and deals. And so pivot tables are usually the best way to represent that. So I think that that's probably where I'll stop with association labels, but there is a knowledge base article that is all about association labels in general with workflows. And with reporting, you just want to think it's going to size down my data set. And I want to be thinking based on association labels and using these headers as a way to know where am I pulling the properties to then pull into my report, my dimensions, and then my metrics are, usually up here. If I wanted to, let's say, pull in deal amount, I could easily do that, right? Something that is another tip, use any property that says in company currency. That's really, really the best way to do it, because if you notice on formatting, I can then do currency conversions. I don't have any conversions in this. I don't have any currency set up in this portal, but you would be able to switch this out. You cannot safely convert any properties that are not safe currencies, and all the properties that say in company currency are safely converted. If I did amount, I would just be able to change the number, the symbol in front of it, not the actual value. So you'll see here, oh, this is in the QA portal. This has been an update. We actually just released formatting everywhere for last week. You now can change the symbols and add symbols onto any formula fields or any non-safe conversion. This will actually convert it, to that currency. So if I went from USD to euros, it would change the actual number as well as the symbol. For all the other ones that can't do safe currencies, it will just add the symbol. Cool. How are we doing, Deanna, on questions?
We've got a ton. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start at the top since you worked through the associations, and I'm going to get us to those. So do we know when the report builder with the AI is going to launch?
Not know, but all big things that we're working on for 2024, and excited about the progress that we're getting towards. But there is I believe it's in a public beta. There is an AI generated report builder that currently works with single objects, and we're going to be moving that into cross objects. I would imagine that would really expand. The way I want to think about AI with report building is, one, just generating reports, but there also are elements of helping in each part of the process. Selecting data sources, selecting the right properties, chart types that are recommended, adding filters. There's a lot of elements of a report configuration and customization that we can use AI to become smarter and to help that process. My main focus and goal is to not have report building be so cumbersome, take up so much time. So much time is spent configuring and figuring out what to do and how to do it, and you're working from all these different properties. I want there to be more time put into data analysis, so we have to make it smarter, more personalized, which is all in the spirit of what AI is doing for changing the landscape of data analysis.
That's great. I think we all just want a kit in our portal to tell us what.
No, I wish I could. It's funny. This is a woman who used to work at HubSpot for a while. Her name is Beth, and she created it's basically like a formatting helper of like, hey, you should change this grammar, or this doesn't make sense. I wish that there was like something I could just put where I could just speak and take all these questions as they come, but fortunately that's not possible at this time.
You got other stuff to do. I totally understand. All right, let's see what's next. So this one came from the chat, so I moved it over. How do you handle reporting on email nurture's built-in workflows?
So that is all still based in, and let me move into, it's our main demo portal, but it's got such messy data that, let me zoom in.
We won't judge you on the data you're showing.
I wish that was something that I really want, is to have really clean sample data, because data is so important for reporting. So any sort of email performance, you're actually going to use the marketing email. So there are 3 data sources here. This was actually the newest data source that we've released for marketing email. The reason that we released this is because you'll notice that there's 2 types of data sources. There's object data sources, which are object properties, and then there's event data sources. And events can be extremely big tables. And so that means that they're very, very slow to load. And so that's why you've seen limits on how much, what the time frame is. We're actually all working on moving those time frames to be larger. So that's great news. But this was the first data source of its kind that had multiple events. You need a rate. To get a rate, you need multiple events. You need to get, like, if you had an open rate, you need delivered and opened. So the difference between this is like the raw data event table. And this is truly like, we call it an event digest. If you think about a zip file, right? It's small, but when you open it up, you can see all of that rich data. That's essentially kind of what this is. It's packaged. It's not as detailed as, let's say, this table, but it's going to get you all of the rich rate data that you see in the analyze space of the email tool. Now, I always, when I'm using marketing email analytics, I pretty much, by rule of thumb, am always going to select marketing email. Marketing email is the object table that's about the rich metadata of the email itself. What the name was, what the subject line was, what type of email it was. So when I select this is important for me to get that information. So something that this has been already brought to the email team is that there is a bit of a missing property. So you're used to looking at, let me actually open up. Let me open up the email analyze tab so we can be talking about the same properties.
Love it. While she's doing that, make sure you guys are upvoting those questions so that we can make sure we get to the ones you're most important for you.
So this email type and what email type we have in here. So you'll see all of that rich data, all those properties about email are on the marketing email data source, which is why I always include it. So if you go and add this over to filters, you will be able to, and see, this is what I'm talking about with the limited amount of time range. We're actually going to be increasing that time range for all customers, which is great. So you can come down here and you're going to want to select automated email. Now, something that I brought to the team is that I said, this list is different than this list. And so what they're working on is they're working on translations between, so that all the options that you see here are the same options that you see here. For right now, I would use this automated email. That's specifically speaking to the workflow performance when you're using emails, because that's that particular type. And then, and this is where I think just getting more data to use that you can use for filtering. Right now, I think that like maybe going off of the campaign name or the email name would be the best way to target the specific workflow. Right now, we do not have workflows as a data source in here. The main reason for that is because workflow events, if we thought marketing email events was a big table, workflow events is a huge table. And so it's a matter of like, is this the right tool and space for that data? But maybe something could be added to the marketing email that we could then use, as opposed to then having to have a naming convention for an email that you could then target it in a report. It's hard to premeditate that. I completely understand, because, when customers are like, I would love to, report on this thing, and then it wasn't set up to then do that, it's hard to go back, and it's almost like you have to think so many steps ahead. And this is one of those cases where I can say it's an automated email, but I don't have an option right now to then say what workflow it is. So you have to kind of get creative of how, what properties and what ways are you naming your marketing emails to then target that.
Yeah, you almost have to think singularly if that's how you're going to report. Like, is this one automated email only in this workflow?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But campaigns is usually a great way to do that, because you can mark it as like only one workflow would have a certain campaign, but that's sometimes hard. You might have the same email across multiple campaigns, so that could muddy it up. But you could always use the campaign name as a way to, break it out in the report if you want.
Sure. It's a great way to think of that. Let's see. Oh, we got one that jumped all the way to the top. Working on marketing report and need to figure out how to effectively utilize the campaign budgets for calculating key metrics. For example, we have a campaign with $20,000 budget, and I want to understand how to use this budget to calculate metrics like return on investment and cost per lead. Is there a specific method to use campaign budgets?
Yeah, this has been a big conversation. And a big conversation has been around campaigns as its own data source. Now, you'll notice that, like, keep an eye up here of when I select data sources. So let's say I wanted to do contacts and marketing email. Do you notice that there are additional tables that are added? And this is HubSpot trying to like simplify things, that there's additional data tables that we'd want to add on when you make those relationships. In some cases, that also is used to help build that join path. So like, let's say I wanted to connect landing pages to companies. Now, companies are not going to websites and filling forms out, contacts are. So you see how it's automatically adding form submissions through there. So that's something just to keep in mind, that campaigns right now is not its standalone data source. So we're trying to figure out what that entails. It now is a supplemental data table that gets added on. Let's go back to just contacts, and then we'll just do marketing email. You see attribution is added. So what you will have to look at is underneath campaigns are properties that are automatically included in that data table. So let's see what we have for budget total. And this is like what you set up on campaigns when you mark down certain things. So for this one, let's actually bring in campaign name. Once again, I don't know what. Let's just do campaign type. That's a contact property. We'll just do, I'm curious about what attribution is. I have no idea what data is in here, so who knows if this is going to make any sense. And then let's just do campaign budget total is greater than 0, just to get rid of all those no budget ones. Hopefully a few of these campaigns have something marked on.
Yeah, hopefully somebody's putting budgets on their campaigns.
Yeah, whoever's in here is like not really pulling their weight. Okay, so we have these numbers, right? We've got the campaign, we've got the budget. Technically, you could do math on this. A lot of the times people, like when you're talking about an ROI, you're talking about an aggregate. You're talking about aggregate math. You're talking about where you have to basically take a number of a report total. So this is already aggregated. It's taking this campaign and adding them together, and you're wanting to do math on this number. That is what requires data sets at this time, is aggregate functions. So the other aspect of ROI is cost, and cost is a really hard data point. We don't have, campaigns is probably the only place, in addition to ads, because you connect your ad campaigns, those are the only two places that I see cost living. And when we talk about having out of the box metrics or metrics that you can just plug and play and use, cost is a big element to that, because a lot of these key marketing and sales metrics require some element of cost, and we need a place to input that. The other aspect that's kind of missing of ROI is attribution. So attribution is, if we think about the attribution builder, there's a bunch of models for how do you attribute and spread out the cost of something and the budget, and how do you say, oh, this particular element of the campaign generated this amount of revenue. There needs to be an element of attribution. So that's what we're talking about having as a representation of a data source in the report builder, where I think what a lot of people are really needing is they're actually needing better metrics on this screen more often than not, where you would have an ROI column, because essentially you're wanting to see like, well, what campaign has generated the most revenue? And that's actually looking at all of the associated assets. It's looking at your input of cost. It's looking at the revenue that's being brought in by these assets, and it's doing the math on that. So that's what my understanding is, that it's about bringing that analysis to this app. And it's kind of like that constant question of, is is it really best fit on the app itself and analyzing the performance of this tool? Or do you need it to be looked at across different objects? And that's when it gets into the custom report builder space, as opposed to, do we just need better columns and better metrics to have on here that we can then add on and have like an ROI element to this? So that's really essentially like, and you can see we've got revenue, and then let's see if we have cost. Yeah, so we don't have cost. Cost is like the most important thing. But adding it on, I didn't actually add on the revenue. Let me go in there. It's essentially doing math on this screen and, but us having an understanding of like, how do people want to attribute revenue? That's another aspect to this. Making data reports are only valuable if the data is accurate and correct, and that things are bubbling up and making sense in the right ways. It's a hard space to be in. Yeah. Data is finicky and unavailable at times.
Yeah, and the data has to actually exist also. Yes. Can't report on something that doesn't exist, for sure. And it looks like we've got some comments that let's see, Market Sharp has a ledger against lead sources, so you can have your accountant log how much you spend on each lead source or campaign. So yeah, there's tools out there.
Tools, and if you can get that as a custom property, you can use that. If it's available, you can use it.
So that's for you admins to, make sure your infrastructure has all of the data you need to report on. So
definitely.
All right, let me get back over here. And I saw one jump all the way to the top. I'd love to learn more about best practices for reporting on playbook completion. Currently, there isn't much in a way of reporting for that. So what would be a workaround solution?
Yeah, playbooks. I haven't been in playbooks in a while, and I know it's not a data source right now available. So I think mainly playbooks are about doing activities typically and populating properties. So like the whole goal is that it's helping to fulfill a process and giving people the right inputs for them to have a call or do a meeting or, finish up a task. And so I would actually focus on whatever playbook that you have, what action that it's trying to take, and then doing a report on that. Where it's not going to be the most fulfilling is that you wouldn't be able to say, this playbook did that. So playbooks is one of those areas that we would need the team that owns playbooks to, we call it the framework. It's basically a way that it's a data management system that all data is interoperable and it works all in the same framework. And I don't know if playbooks is on our framework. There's a lot of push to get all data from these apps to be in one space. And then that would open it up for tools like my team. And there's also an idea of like, how do playbooks relate to other records, other objects? I'm not sure if there are associations of like, it would probably be to the activity, I would imagine. Let me see actually what, let's see if there's any sort of mention of a playbook property on the activities data source. That's where I would imagine it would live, because playbooks are typically trying to get them to do something, but also it's about filling out properties too. So it's kind of interesting, but let's just see quickly if there's any property around playbooks.
Yeah, I just put a note into the chat that, things like that, I know Kit's touching on them. They're not necessarily in her realm, but if she's giving you information to lead you to request things,
yes,
ideas for them, put it in the feedback. We'll share it with the teams as much as we can. So
yeah, that's a really great call out. Ideas forum, huge place to leave ideas, upvote, comment. Those are things that when we ship a feature and we present it to the team, those are the things that we're highlighting of, this is a top idea. This is really solving. And it's also if I go to these data teams, I'm like, we really need, like, help me help you. We really need to show the value of your tool. We need to get the data in here. It's further evidence that I can use to say customers need this, customers want this. So ideas forum is big. And your customer success manager, whoever your account owner is at HubSpot, they file what we call roadblocks. And those roadblocks go directly to our product teams and we take ownership of those. So roadblocks are huge. I don't see as many just because it doesn't come in as much as like CSAT feedback. I also think CSAT feedback, if you get a survey that asks, how is reporting doing for you? We do get hit with a lot of the data availability stuff, which technically we are downstream from the data. So it's, we then take it back to the team and we say, hey, form submissions is like so requested. People want CTAs. Like we then take that and then, it influences leadership based on what are we going to prioritize, and data teams, getting their data set up on the framework and then model to work in our builder.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and we do take the feedback that you all share at the Hug events. And if it's specific teams, we do distribute it to the correct teams. So
yep. I have just a few things that I can fire off from the form, and then we can go back to the live ones. Mm-hmm. So there was a question around, is there a way to manually override the deal stage entered date? Even as a super admin, we'd like to accurately show our funnels and deal reports, but there's no way to do that with the deals that are brought in later. This is once again a data question. I don't believe that there's a way to override it, but I know that the CRM team is specifically working on what's called stage calculated properties. And that is going to have much more accurate time in stage for contacts. They're going to move into deals and then tickets and then basically custom objects, anything that can have a funnel or stages. So it's like when you move from one stage to another, we're going to be tracking how much time that took. If you go back into a stage and then back out, it will be cumulative of that. I still don't know if you can manually set that. It would be more of when you put that record in that stage and you move it, that's when those properties will fire. So keep an eye out for that. I believe that contacts should be releasing pretty soon, and then deals is being worked on now. So just wanted to highlight that. There was also a question around joins. So is it possible to create 0 activity reports with data sets? When creating reports for activity, it only shows you the accounts that have an activity, but we want to see accounts that show no activity. And that's talking about needing more than a left join. A left join is it basically requires that association. What you're wanting to see is the right join. We call it like a negative association. And right now we only have a left join support. And I was talking at the beginning, before people filed in, we're trying to figure out, one, we need more flexible joins, but we also have to figure out like, how much do people want to control their join? Like when they're setting up data sources, do they need to, like, how much do they need to understand what primary, secondary is? And how much do we need people to know before they can get value out of a tool? And so I think first and foremost is that we need to have more flexible joins. But I think the question is, I don't know how much we need to rely on you all knowing what's happening. Kind of think some of the things that we're talking about is just having filters. Your filters will automatically set your joins for you and get you the results without you having to think about it. That's kind of where I'm thinking. But I do think that data sets is the tool that would, if there was any sort of join UI, when I say that, you usually think about like Tableau, like join, like I think it's Tableau prep. So when you look at, I totally did not spell Tableau right. I'm not the best at typing on the fly, but when I'm talking about a join UI, I'm talking about this, where you're taking the data tables and you're doing it very visually. This is easier than writing SQL, where it's like, oh, this table is filtered and it's joined with this table and I want to have this type of join. The question is like, how much is that needed and how much do people want to like manually manipulate their join? A lot of the times you just want the report. You just want it to work. And that's something that we're talking about and how to get there.
I think the consensus is that it's wanted, but it's wanted when they're ready to use it, not necessarily right this second, because not everyone even, will follow along with that. And
I know. And that's where people do understand filters, right? Like this question, it was about, I just want all companies that have 0 activities. That's a filter, really. And as opposed to then, okay, I gotta have like this is the left side and this is the right side, and like then we'll come together. That's too confusing, right? But people work much easier with filters. And so I feel like that could be a sweet spot. And how much do people really want to be working within the join nuances, as opposed to how can I just select my data sources and pick the filters I want, and then we do the join for you based on how the filters are stated.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we've got a group of admins, so they're a little more advanced than most users. So they're wanting the more advanced functionality. So perfect.
I have one more question that I could get into, but I'm curious to know how the Q&A is kind of funneling out. Are there a lot of top voted ideas?
We got through the top 5. We've got one. Can we share a difference between ad performance metrics and ad interactions by contact?
Yeah. So ad performance metrics, ad interactions by contact is an event table that can be joined to other data sources. So let's look at it with contacts. And so ad interactions by contact, this is like the event, and you'll see the count of ad, like these are some default metrics that you can work with. And then these are like the ad account properties. So this is more of like, remember how marketing email had a lot of the rich data about the ad? That's kind of what this is. It's allowing you to have information about the ad and then these specific events. So this is more of just like the count of ads, whereas ad performance metrics is the like number of clicks. And you will notice that it can't be joined with any of these data sources. And that's actually due to the way that the data is set up. There is not currently something that's linking this table to these tables. And it has to do with the way that these ad networks are set up and the way it connects and doesn't connect to context. I don't want to get into the nuances of it, but it's something that we're very well aware of. And we're also, we're wanting to figure out how do we make those associations. The other aspect of this is that there are a number of roll-up properties. When I say roll-up properties, you'll see that like clicks is one. And when you have a roll-up property, what that means is that it's pre-aggregated. If I were to, let's say I were to do an order online, I bought 4 things each at $25 and my final bill was $100. When something comes into this space that just has the total number, so let's say an order amount was $100, and then I wanted to then separate out, well, what did I buy for $100? I can't do that if it's already aggregated. What we need is we actually need the raw data. Like essentially these clicks are already summed up. And so then I can't actually, like if I had a contact, I wouldn't be able to break out, well, how many clicks was, did this contact do? Just to demonstrate that, I think when I have deals and contacts, so essentially the difference with that ad performance metrics is that you're going to get more of the pre-aggregated amounts, whereas ad interactions by contact is going to be more of just like it's not going to have those amounts, but it's going to have details about the ad. So we have 2 things. We've got amount in company currency. And then we also have this total revenue on the contact level. And you'll notice that this is what we call a rolled up property. It's basically all of the associated deals added up onto the contact. And if I had, multiple deals, I wouldn't be able to separate out those numbers. This is unfortunately a bad example because these are all the same amount. But I wouldn't be able to separate out those numbers if this was 100 and this was just 28. I wouldn't be able to say this deal led to that. So I don't know if that's answering the question, but there is some issues with the way that the data is set up and the way that the data can be linked to other data sources that we're talking with the ads team about and looking to figure out. But the whole goal is that we want to be able to recreate the analyze tabs and analyze experiences, but we can't do that if we can't connect it to contacts, especially to do like cost of lead or cost of, something, because I'm only going off of ads data.
That makes sense. I'm going to bring it back to the joins. We had a specific question of where can people go to learn more about left joins, right joins, reporting, data structure basics?
Yeah, there is, I believe, let's see if it has launched. I know that there's a revamp of the reporting certification that talks about these fundamentals of data, and HubSpot Academy. HubSpot reporting. So maybe it's in here. Yeah. So this is, we're putting a lot of investment into having HubSpot reporting speak to the fundamentals. And so I'd recommend going to the HubSpot reporting. I believe this is a full certification, and doing the HubSpot CRB deep dive and talking about joining your data. This talks about just like the steps that you would want to think about when you're building and, creating these reports. So I would probably start with here, and then, online, if you did a search for left joins, that can help you. You also could go back to the May deep dive that I did. I talked a little bit about that in the beginning of how do we want to think about the way that left joins, size down your data. The other thing that I recommend you looking at is in the report builder, when you are selecting your data sources, there is this data join info section that does kind of tell you how your join is happening. So up here, right, you have your contacts, all companies related to those contacts, and then all deals related to those. And you get those breakdowns of like, okay, you can see that some deals do not have any associations to contacts. So those got filtered out. This can be a way that you can kind of see at a quick glance, like how many rows of data are you working with? Rows are equivalent to records. So this could also be something to help you. I will say though, this is hard to read, right? People want more visual indications of what's happening. So that's another thing that we're thinking about, is how do we make this page less information heavy and more streamlined, where you're getting the information that you need at the right times. We're also, I think there's elements of wanting to have the data model overview be a bit more present in reports. So when I say data model, everyone should have access to this thing called data model under data management. And it essentially, this is a great way to explain, if you're explaining something to someone about objects and activities. This right now is not the full landscape of, wow, they've really added a lot to this. This is cool. Wait, this is really cool. I haven't been in here in a few weeks because I've been like, hey, I need more representation of data in here. And so you can actually hover over this and see how are these, like what associations are present. Each line is equivalent to an association. You also can do things, so this is probably like, that screen is very zoomed out, but you can also see things of like how many records, This is going to just continue to be more fleshed out with data quality information. You can see properties, associations, like all of this is going to be just even more connected in 2024, and having a better data dictionary or a representation of the way that your data is modeled and organized. So I think that this is a really great tool to explain and just kind of reference of things. Each time I like zoom in, this is not getting any, yeah, we'll have to work on the zooming aspect of that. But data model overview is a great helpful tool.
Awesome. Yeah. And just, yeah, reminder, if you haven't gone into a part of a system in a while, go check it out. It's likely changed. Certifications change all the time.
Totally.
Ever evolving, ever evolving. All right. Let me give you another question from most voted. We got a couple that jumped back up. We have probably time for one more. So I'm going to do the next highest one. Okay. Do you have any suggestions for how to show a report, one report that captures how much one person in the company contributed towards a deal winning? For example, this is not the deal owner and they are not part of the marketing team, but they are being asked to show how much they've influenced the pipeline. Their role wouldn't really be creating a deal either, but more communicating with clients. That's a tall order.
Yeah, that to me feels like something that you would need attribution report for, attribution builder. Let's do, so what was it deal revenue or deal creation?
To show influenced the pipeline. So let's go with revenue.
Okay. So I'm just going to do it from scratch you're saying, was this like a marketer who's doing something?
Yeah. So someone that's contributed, but isn't the deal owner, contributed to the activity by communicating with the client. So some sort of timeline activity.
I probably would do it off, because here's the thing, like you need an element of attribution on something. And so I'm assuming that these are marketing assets. So like, I think something like this, where you're breaking the dimension is by asset type, that's down here. And then this is all closed won revenue when I'm doing a revenue-based attribution report. So there was 3 options on that screen. It was content creation, deal creation, and revenue. So these are all closed deals. And you can then decide how you want to break this down. And this actually goes over each of the models. So you can decide, is it the first interaction? Is it the last interaction? People typically do linear because it's equal attribution across each of these pieces. I probably would go with either created by user ID, or I probably would do the team element. So like maybe it's growth team is doing something. And so as they're building landing pages, as they're doing marketing email, all of these elements that do contribute to the pipeline, they're getting credit for that. So like I would say, is any of, there's no team in here, which is kind of surprising. But like if it's the growth team, I would then have that report, and then that would break down their contribution to the pipeline. That's my interpretation of it. But I would recommend coming into this builder and then playing around with it, seeing what kind of dimensions that you would want, whether it's by like the asset title, or, you're wanting to break it down by the deal type or the deal pipeline. That's like, would be probably just like the amount of money in that pipeline. And then playing around with a few different things and probably using a filter related towards ownership of the asset.
No, that makes good sense. You have to define what you're trying to report on before you can start pushing out some sort of structure for a report, obviously.
Yeah.
Awesome. Kit, we're closing in on the hour and there's a ton more questions.
Yeah.
I will make sure they come over to you so that if you can reach out in the community or on LinkedIn and just answer any of those that are applicable, and we can pass on the rest to the rest of the team. If anybody wants to connect with you, is LinkedIn or email, which is your preferred method?
I'm notoriously not good on LinkedIn, and then email is tough because I don't know why I've put my work email as like my sign up for everything. So it's become overwhelming. Honestly, probably a community post. I actually wonder if we could have, I could connect with you offline of like, how do we set up just a post? And then maybe I can do a Loom where I just kind of talk through and answer the things that I didn't get to answer and just walk through it that way, because there was a few that I didn't get to on the form as well. So maybe that would be a good, or I could go on the LinkedIn user group as well. So we can kind of talk about where would that best place be for us to engage. But I need to get better at LinkedIn. I'm skittish on LinkedIn for some reason.
Why? You know so much. We all want to pick your brain all the time. So we really do appreciate you showing up, and we'll make sure that whatever method Kit can get that information to you guys, we'll make sure it gets out. And thanks everybody for coming. I'll see you next week. Thanks,
Thanks
Kit.
so much. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.